When did you see or have an inkling of where we are right now that this was coming, right? That where you have the Jujus and the Caitlin Clarks. Where did you see the start of this? Where were the seeds planted on this run that we're currently in?
Yeah, so there's the main thing that's at play is like societal things. So there's some societal changes that happen. Sedona Prince's TikTok highlighting the discrepancies at the NCAA tournament when they were in a bubble. So the men's weight room versus the women's. I think 2020 in general changed the conversation in this country around race. The WNBA was uniquely positioned because we played in our season that summer. So we're on TV a lot more, getting to have these conversations. Obviously, it's a league made up of Black women. So there's like probably a couple others, like societal things. For me, that is like the main thing. That is the main thing. Like you can't have a conversation about the state of women's basketball without understanding how racism and sexism and all these isms, really, like homophobia, et cetera, have impacted it. But when I started to see, I would call it 2019, because I remember vividly, we were about to enter, we were like really getting into our CBA negotiations. Like we were like in the thick of it. And when I started to see Paige Beckers and Haley Van Lith, fast forward a couple years, it's Juju. But when I started to see high school basketball players have huge followings, like Paige Beckers, and probably Caitlin to some degree, I'd have to go back and check, but like I know Paige for sure. Paige was like borderline 1 million followers on Instagram before she even got to UConn. When I started to see that, I was like, oh, we got new technology on our iPads here. Oh, can you see that?
yeah. That's how we feel about women's college basketball.
There it is, folks. There it is. If anyone's gotten the update, they know. Yeah. So like when I started to see that, I literally thought to myself, I've never said this out loud, but I literally thought to myself, like, yo, from a, not a player standpoint, like a WNBA league business standpoint, I was like, they can't let these kids ever go overseas. Like the WNBA needs to do something with their business where these kids who are creating followings in high school, which are only going to get like magnified in college because of the college basketball platform and the NCAA tournament, all the things, they can't, when those kids get to the WNBA, they can't let them ever leave. And that could be a turning point, and it's actually happening.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because when I think about the time that we're in now, right, like just in college sports in general, we are in the NIL era, full stop. This is where we're at, right? But I've just seen the difference between the men's games and the men's sports versus the women's sports. And it seems like NIL on the men's side has really just divided how we think about college sports, right? With just the conference realignment. And I know that does affect women's sports, but I feel like in men's, it has widened the gap between the haves and the have-nots, where I feel like when I watch college women's basketball, it's actually just gassed up what you guys have already had, right? Where it's a good thing that Juju is getting all these sponsorships, and now she's in a great market like Los Angeles, right? But then you also have Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese becoming these voices in a way that I feel like it's helping college women's basketball in a way that it's not happening on the men's side. It's more of like a widen the have-nots. What is the difference you've seen between both entities on the men's side and the women's side?
Yeah. Well, first of all, NIL, it even is a part of the last question you asked. Like what has caused like some of it's NIL for sure. I mean, I'm going to take a stab at this. I've never really thought about it like too deep. I would guess that in men's sports, because the professional leagues are still the destination financially, like nobody's really as focused on the NIL space as much in the college game for men's, right? Because a lot of these guys, like they're making their money. They're going to go make more money when they go to the next level. Now there might be, there's going to be outliers that are bomb in college and then don't become professionals. Obviously it is shifting like football and where players are going and transferring and this and that, which is shifting the conferences. But I think for basketball specifically, like just basketball, either these players, the ones that are exciting to watch or the ones that have brand names, have already been like one and dones and are already in the NBA, or maybe they went to, the G League Unite team or whatever other path there is. So they're not in college. So the ones that are in college, if you're good enough, you're going to go make NBA money. So it's not as much as about, whereas on the women's side, by the way, this is where we're getting to a whole other NIL thing. The money is there to be made as a professional women's basketball player. I can sit here and tell you that. Like, I'm doing just fine. But the fact that these women...
I've been to your house, Sue, and you're doing just fine. It's great.
We're doing all right.
You're doing great.
I know. We're dinks over here. Double income, no kids. Killing it.
So, jealous.
Yeah. Congratulations, by the way. With the women's side, I think because college basketball has been around for so long, there we go again. Because college basketball has been around for so long, there's these built-in fan bases. The game itself is big. March Madness is its own entity the women play on. Now they're getting paid. It just elevates that status. So now you have a certain status that's coming with a college women's basketball player that for some reason it's changing in the WNBA. For some reason, there's been some negative narratives about the money we make, or even that kids should stay in college. And obviously, listen, Caitlin Clark has a year on the table, a year of eligibility, right, and she's given that up to go. So clearly there's money to be made on the other side.
You guys have 3 years. I think also you guys have 3 years, right? You guys have 3 years in college, right?
Yeah, it's a little complicated. Kind of.
It is complicated, but I think the positive part.
You can go play pro for 1 year at any point, and then you're eligible.
Got it. Okay.
If you go overseas, if you go anywhere and play pro for 1 year, you're immediately eligible no matter how old you are. That's how Europeans are in our league at 18, 19.
Got it. Whoa,
but that's a kind of a bit of a... Yeah,
okay, and you have to stay for 3 years.
It's kind of like one and done. You just got to go play pro somewhere for 1 year.
It's like the old school Brandon Jennings back in the day. You just go overseas for a year and then come right back. But the point that I wanted to make on that though, it seems like that is working to as an advantage in this new NIL structure, right? It's working to the advantage of women's sports because you can make your money if you are a Paige Beckers or if you're a Caitlin Clark, but you have a bit of that recognition around the country because the consumer actually sees you over 3 years, and then you go into the W. And as you're building your brand through in college, then you can go right to the W, and you're already a star. Whereas I think right now, where we are, specific to college basketball, they haven't been able to manufacture those stars in this way in the NIL era because you don't have that recognition, right? Mm-hmm. The same one, and I think we're starting to see that even now with the tournament. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about, because, you started to touch more and you have been one of the guiding voices in growing the game and how we are in this new era. What did you, and I know you were with LeBron and with Uninterrupted, what did you learn from that side of it and on how to grow the game on the women's side and with the player led media? How have you been able to use that to also kind of do it right, do it with Together and A Touch More and in different places like that? And how is the women's game kind of uniquely qualified, or not qualified is a bad word, but uniquely suited for this right now in the media age right now, where we're growing all together as a media structure to cover women's sports?
Yeah, I think what you see on the guys' side, on the men's side, obviously LeBron and Uninterrupted is a great example. If memory serves, part of the reason why he started it and part of the reason why it's called Uninterrupted is because I don't want to put words in his mouth. I heard him talk about it once. It was he felt like the media was able to, for lack of a better, control things a little bit. He couldn't always get it out without being interrupted, that kind of a vibe. And really all that is understand what I take from that and what I bring to the women's game. And what I'm really finding in my retirement is the stories exist. The storylines exist. The rivalries exist. I mean, just touching on what you were saying, especially given that it's March, given that we're in the thick of it, the beauty of these women going to college for multiple years is it's going to, rivalries are going to, you're going to want to see Paige play Juju this NCAA tournament, and next. It's going to continue. Point being, all these things exist. They just haven't been told. And if they have been told, a lot of times they haven't been told with the nuance that you need to tell these stories. So I think player-led companies, you already mentioned Together. The other one that Megan and I have is A Touch More. We're going to be able to have our experience and our knowledge and all that we bring. We're going to be able to provide that nuance. So our fingerprints are going to be all over this storytelling. and then you're telling it accurate, you're telling it right. I can turn on the TV and listen to some people talk about college basketball right now, and they're getting like 2 or 3 things just like blatantly wrong. Whereas if you're in it,
you sound like LeBron right now with the mind the game.
But
you
it's
sound
true.
Yeah.
It's true. It's like not even the X's and O's. Like I'm not trying to call people out, but I turned on a popular ESPN program where there were 2 people talking, and they even they ended up changing and coming back and correcting it. But in the moment, they got the fact that Caitlin had a COVID year wrong. They didn't know that little, and those types of details, when you mess those things up, they add up. And so I just think our stories need to be told by those that have experienced it. Not that mainstream media isn't important, it is, but having these player-led companies come in, it's just going to make the storytelling that much better. And that's what grows games. That's what grows leagues. That's what grows sports.
So the thing that the key difference, I think, because, I've covered the NBA for a while, and I've covered LeBron for a while in a distant way, but like, the difference, I think, with Uninterrupted with LeBron and what you guys are doing is that there was a media infrastructure centered around covering men when he started Uninterrupted, right? And
Definitely.
I think with you, and I think with Megan, and I think with the rise of women's sports, you guys are kind of coming on the, lack of a better term, ground floor on this, right? Where you guys are growing as the game is growing with this media apparatus that is now paying attention to women's basketball right now. And I think, to your point, as a consequence, one of the growing pains of that is a lot of people that aren't watching women's sports talking about women's sport at the highest level, because you see these people, they have these platforms already built in just in general. And in its adjustment, they probably just started watching women's sports maybe a couple of years ago, and they maybe not have the infrastructure to do it. And I think that it's going to take, like, as a Monica McNutt, I'm a stan of Monica McNutt, she knows that, as those kind of come into focus and the Andrea Carters come into focus, right? And Shanae continues her rise. I think we're going to start getting more nuanced discussions on a higher level about women's sports in that way.